Welcome to BA4Space. I bring you business, data, and financial analysis concerning our favorite subject, commercial space. So let's kick things off with the Space Startup Roundup. I'm going to talk about emerging new space companies. These are the startups that either promote or directly contribute to the burgeoning capitalization of suborbital, orbital, and outer space industries, and each week we take one of them and break the company down into an analysis, starting with a company profile. And then I'll run a SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And then I run a gap analysis to determine where their aspirations may run short due to the gap between what they have and what they need to succeed. For the last part of the company breakdown, I make my own personal recommendation for the space startup. I make predictions, and then I wish them all the best of luck in their endeavors. This week's space startup company roundup includes LSE Space, Schakleton Energy Corporation, and GETSAT. And let's start with LSE Space. So according to Bloomberg, LSE Space operates as an independent space consultancy. The company supports satellite and manned space missions and offers spacecraft operations and ground engineering services. LSE supports project phases from designing and testing to launch and operations. This is very management consulting firm-ish, and it's a great example of employing specialty talents and industry skills in order to promote and bolster growing independent commercial space enterprises. So, on to the next startup. Schakleton Energy Corporation. If you visit the overview page on their website at shackletonenergy.com, it reads, quote, "There are billions of tons of water ice on the poles of the moon. We are going to extract it, turn it into rocket fuel, and create fuel stations in Earth's orbit." Big words and even bigger ambitions. Is this beyond their reach? Not according to Jim Caravella, COO and SEC, who says they're already collaborating with NASA and ESA to develop core technology for operations on asteroids and drilling on Mars. And we'll see how they pan out. But for now, we move on to GETSAT. On the front page of GETSAT at GETSAT.com, it states that they are micronizing satellite communication. Well, that's great, but what do they do? Upon further digging, it looks like they have an interesting concept of mobile satellite information transmitters and receivers. To fully appreciate what they're trying to do, you have to understand the four basic parts of satellite communication. There's an uplink Earth station or other ground equipment. It transmits the desired signal to the satellite. Then the satellite amplifies the incoming signal and changes the frequency. The satellite transmits the signal back to Earth, and then the ground equipment receives the signal. So, right now, transmitters and receivers are pretty bulky. What GETSAT is doing is not only miniaturizing these ground units, but making them mobile as well. Imagine if you could throw a transmitter and receiver as one unit in the back of your car and get a signal anywhere you wanted. Not only is it mobile, but durable and versatile as it operates on all three communication bands. Keep cruising, GETSAT. In order to democratize orbital satellites, we also have to democratize the ground units. So that's it for this week's Space Company Startup Roundup, and time to reveal who will be profiled on this week's BA4Space analysis. This week, we profile LSE Space. This was a toss-up between Schakleton Energy, but choices had to be made and tears were shed. In the end, I'm going for a space management and operations consulting firm because that's why. Let's start with the SWOT. So we have strengths. These are the startups I can get behind. The great thing is that LSE is not technically a startup. Founded in 1990 and operating for more than 27 years, LSE has established their foothold on the commercial space industry. Were they working space operations exclusively? Maybe, maybe not. But now is the time to strike while the iron's hot. There is a term in economics called competitive advantage. All that really means is that a group or region can produce or provide a service more easily than other groups based off of their advantage, whatever that might be. If you can provide a service better than a launch or satellite company that complements their operations, they're better to hire you to do it than to try to develop or perform it in-house. They've been in business for years. They specialize in launch and orbital consulting services. You're best to leave it at the pros. So what are the weaknesses? This is a pretty specific market. When compared to other management consultant firms, LSE is looking for work around launch, orbital, aerospace engineering, and flight operations services. And while more and more launch and microsat companies are coming online, is it enough? SpaceX performs all flight, orbital, and landing services in-house. Blue Origin isn't ready for prime time, and the Electron rocket has only flown once in a test. Launches, orbital maneuvers, and cross-vertical activities need to increase before the company can hope to focus solely on the commercial space industry, if that is in fact their goal. So, what's the opportunities? Consulting requires an edge, a methodology, some sort of formula that tells customers they need you over the other guys. Fortunately for LSE, they don't need a ramp up. Sure, you can take a Doylett and Ernst & Young and apply it to the space sector. They are just going to hire SMEs anyway. But what if LSE was tailored specifically for space operations? They are turnkey, and that's going to help keep their name on top of the list of consultants to call. So, what are the threats? Interesting, the threats can also include the same elements described as opportunities, namely Doylett, PwC, McKinsey. McKinsey & Company specialize in supply chain management, operations, engineering, and R&D. These guys have been around for a while and can adjust the demands of an emerging commercial space industry just as quickly with a much more established pedigree and track record. LSE may think they have the only card trick at the party, but just to lay out some truth, you are surrounded by magicians. Let's hit the gap analysis. So the purpose of a gap is to identify where we are and contrast that to where we want to be. We illustrate current state, future state, describe the gap between the two, and talk about ways to bridge that gap. So what's the current state? Management consulting firms enjoy a niche that applies to so many aspects of business. We've got management, we've got operations, we've got finance, logistics, marketing, and human resources. The beauty with the current state of management consulting is that business is business. Operations and engineering methodology applies to all four corners of business in general. All management consulting firms have something that sets them apart in terms of specialty, industry expertise, agility, or price points, for crying out loud. Future state. This is where we can have a bit of fun. This is where we want to be. So where does LSE want to be? At this point, it looks as though LSE likes where they are. They're comfortable. They've been in business for over 27 years, and from the looks of it, have no real interest in growing. Is that bad? I don't know. This company reminds me of a small company I used to work for. It was nimble and could respond quickly to change and system requests from customers. But during the time I was there, they never grew. One of the advantages to having a grand vision is that it attracts the best players in the game. As a consultancy company, that's what you want. Another advantage of being the go-to guys in the business is that contributing firms of the private space industry don't need to burden themselves on reinventing the rockets and operations if you have a turnkey solution. This is your product. Develop it. Grow it. It is no different than a widget on a shelf that's just waiting for the right market opportunity. From all accounts, LSE doesn't have a future state. My advice? Get one, and fast. You've been in the only game in town, but the town is growing, and you are going to get trampled and die hard and fast. Gap. So the big question is whether LSE is in tune with the emerging trends of modern commercial space. Are they sticking to their long and faithful clients, or are they ready for startup takeover of the rest of a 95% market share? If not, that's a problem. They have 79 missions under their belt. According to their mission page on their own website, every one of them is tied to a government agency. They don't deal with the little guys. And why should they? One big reason. If you look at the years and missions, you will see a fundamental business problem. Their consultancy manifest is tied to the whims of government space policies and funding. In 1996 and 98, they had no business. They were doing great in 2008, but lately they have fallen back to their startup days. This is the gap, folks. You want to smooth out the trend line, and the only way to do that is to avail yourself to private organizations that would do well with your expertise. Sure, they might have the big payday, but will it be consistent? And when it comes to business operation and financial strategy, the ability to forecast goes a long way. So what's the bridge? LSE's best bet for success is to focus on the services and products that they can deal with at the moment. There is little value to being the Mars agriculture and design gurus because we haven't done it yet. Outside of CAD or The Sims, don't worry about bridging conceptual solutions to space elevators because it's still a pipe dream and you can't do anything with it. You can't build on it. You can't improve it, and you can't suggest alternatives to it because no one's going to pay for it. We all want to see space explored and settled. That's not in the question. But think about it. What can you offer in terms of expert advice in the now? We have supply chains for launch vehicles, procure-to-pay considerations for operations, marketing, promotion, and alliances that must be forged between horizontals and verticals. The private space industry has very specific needs and problems that require expert solutions. Such solutions are: who are the best suppliers for hardened electronics suitable for a space environment? What off-the-shelf components have proven successful for launch vehicle integrations? And who do I need to talk to regarding the technical requirements and specification of those integrations? So, conclusions and recommendations. Focus on what you know. You can still single yourself out as a space-oriented management consultant and contribute directly to resolving specific problems related to the industry. You do not need to engage in speculation or fantasy and dream building. It's fun, don't get me wrong, and there is a place for it when conceptualizing the future. But bringing the money in will be the fastest way to drive the future that we all want. We can sell space, but who's going to do it? LSE? I could see that. If they stick to their proven methodology and curtail casting of a wide net, LSE could be the go-to management consulting firm for space. Consulting for a small but growing industry is hard, but rife with opportunities as long as they stay in their lane. You might call that cynical, but hey man, it's not cynical, it's just business. And I'll see you all next week.